Alright then, a Brutal Gacha review. Wuthering Waves from Styx. Let's see what he's got to say. Another Styx video, should definitely check him out. All things gacha.
Wuthering Waves is Kudo Games' new flagship title, a gacha game set to combat the titan that is Genshin Impact. Or at least that's what social media likes to think. Wuwa is an open...
That might be what social media likes to think, but let's not pretend it isn't. I don't know if that was their design philosophy of we're gonna topple them, but let's not pretend that, you know, I've had a few comments on my videos recently saying that Wuthering Waves is not like a copy of Genshin, and I don't, when I talk about that in my videos, I'm not saying it's a direct copy. Let's stop pretending that Wuthering Waves isn't heavily inspired by Genshin Impact, and that wasn't heavily inspired by Zelda. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I think people seem to get a bit offended by that sometimes. Of like, oh, you can't compare them. It doesn't. It's totally different in this. And it's let's not stop pretending. They're very similar, and there's a lot of mechanics and design philosophy that's taken from Genshin, and there's nothing wrong with that. I believe, in my opinion, they've improved on it, they've made it better, and I prefer it over Genshin. The one thing being the main thing about it that, in my opinion, makes this game better is the combat, among a lot of other things, you know, traversal, the ecosystem, a bunch of different stuff, the character designs, all that stuff. But let's not pretend that the games aren't similar, and it was definitely heavily inspired by Genshin.
Open world action RPG with many features reminiscent of the aforementioned title, but just because a game takes inspiration from another game doesn't inherently make it a clone, a copy. Just like Genshin Impact took inspiration from Breath of the Wild, if you recall the...
Exactly. And I don't think it's a copy, you know? I don't think it's a copy. But, you know, I think people are a little bit disingenuous when they try and make it that it's happened in a vacuum kind of thing, because some people do kind of try to insinuate that, and it's like, come on, you know, come on.
Angry guy destroys PS4 over Genshin Impact copying Breath of the Wild meme. Wuthering Waves took inspiration from Genshin Impact, and both games have since established themselves as their very own entities. It has been 2 months since release.
I love Wuthering Waves, but I don't know if it necessarily has just yet. I think that's one thing that they've got to work towards in giving the game a little bit more self-identity. Now, I think people who are fans of Wuthering Waves see that, and I do as well. I see how it's different in a lot of ways, but I think I'm hoping that's what we're going to see coming soon. The game, you know, really gets its almost unique identity in a way.
And I think it's about time I push out my official review of the game.
Right,
I've been playing every single day since launch, not missing logging in for a single day. Partly because
I must confess, I missed logging in yesterday. I got into bed last night, and I was chilling for a little bit, and it was after midnight, and I turned around to Rose, and I was like, fuck, I forgot to log in. I was like, I ain't going downstairs now, though.
Because I enjoy staring at Chongli, watching Chongli from a distance, safe distance, you know, a respectful...
Dude, just look at her thighs, man. You know, just look at the thighs popping.
I enjoy looking at her respectfully, and partly because it takes forever to grind certain materials to upgrade your resonators and your echoes, so a missed day could set you back, and I don't do setbacks. I am dedicated, I am hardworking, I am the flaccid Styx, unless I stare respectfully at Chongli. Upon loading into the game for the very first time,
Styx is such a Kuma. Such a freaking Kuma.
You're greeted with a beautiful backdrop featuring both the male and the female rover, along with some of the best title screen background music I've heard in a gacha game.
It is good. The OST of the game in general is really good. It's not Genshin levels, and it's not Star Rail levels, because I think Hoyo Hoyo absolutely smash it on the music side of things. Like, there's a lot of good things about Hoyo games, but the music is just, it is top tier. But it's really good in Wuthering Waves as well. Rover just looks so cute, doesn't she? But you guys can't see her, she's behind me.
Some people prefer the old backdrop, but I honestly like the beauty and realism in this one. The rover, regardless of which gender you decide on, looks phenomenal. I think out of all...
Disagree. Only one looks phenomenal, but I digress.
Major gacha games available at the time of this video, Wuthering Waves features the best looking protagonist. Sure, you can argue that, but you'd be wrong, because you can't argue with perfection. I went with the female rover because she has such a great personality. And honestly, she just looks better than Lumine, looks better.
The irony of that is she really doesn't do shit at the minute. At the minute, you know, hopefully he gets better. But I get what he's getting.
Then Stella looks better than Belle, or even the female in Tower of Fantasy. You know, the one you see.
Does she look? I really like Belle's design. I do. I think Rover looks better. I suppose it's what you're looking for. I think Rover looks better in terms of she's probably like cuter, and I guess more. She exudes more sex appeal, if you want to word it like that. But I really like the design of Belle. I do. Like, there's no argument that Belle compared to Wise, it's night and day. I love everything about Belle's design. I do.
See at the beginning when you're with your brother, the complete stranger you met while running around.
Still yet to play this game. We've got to do it.
I don't know, the male that you never see ever again. There's just something about the female rover that just appealed to me. After selecting your gender, you're immediately greeted with a long, arduous tutorial that can be summarized as teaching a marathon runner how to walk like he's a cripple. Here's an example.
Hey, do you know you can walk?
Wait, for real? That is awesome!
Yeah, you can also run up walls like Spooderman.
Wait, wow, that is so cool! You know,
Woo! Yeah! Woo!
Wait, no, not up, no, oh. Well, yeah, they're dead. So, Young, what are you doing later?
After making it through the tutorial, you're greeted with an enormous open world to explore, filled with dangerous enemies, especially if you tackle patch content, like Mount Firmament too early. There are puzzles to solve, treasure chests to loot, side quests to partake of, and lots of Yang talking, which there would be considerably less of had they told her that it was acceptable to talk at normal human speed. But if you're more
Dude, that's one thing, like, Yang, there's almost like, obviously you can tell it's like, she talks like an AI, trying to sound like a human almost.
interested in simply exploring what the world has to offer, then there's dozens of hours worth of map completion, something that I have yet to even finish, mostly because I lack the attention span to
Yep, agreed. I see so many people, like, they're like, dude, I've 100%ed all these areas, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm the exact same. I just don't have the attention span. I try every day, like, I get it, I'm like, well, let's do a little bit of exploration. Then I'm just like, after about 15 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I need to go do something else, man. I want to do something else in the game. I'm bored of this.
Wait, what's that? While the vast majority of the world is unlocked immediately upon completion of the introductory sequences, there are still features locked behind story progression, which brings us to my first major complaint with Wuthering Waves. It's lackluster.
He might bring it up. I'm surprised the first major complaint when he spoke about Yang is the voice acting. The voice acting in the game is not for all characters, but for quite a lot of the characters, like mid and just above mid. Some being kind of poor. There's some standout performances. Scar absolutely smashed it. I think Jian's is decent as well. I like Yinlin. You know, there are definitely, I think Chang Li did a really good job as well, and Jinsi did a really good job. There are definitely good performances, but I think a lot of it is kind of like again, comparing it to something like Genshin, probably not to that sort of level. And Honkai Star Rail as well. There's so many standout performances in Star Rail that it's just not quite there yet, and hopefully that'll continue to improve. And as well, some of the writing and the exposition and the waffle that's got nothing to do with nothing.
Her first few chapters. As you continue to progress through the game, you'll notice, especially after Scar is introduced, Jinta becomes a more focal point of the story, and Yang, Chisha, and Baija all become much less important background characters, thank God.
Yeah, Baija really like becomes like a non-character in the game, doesn't she?
That the story really picks up around chapter 4. Finding the patience to actually sit through chapters 1 through 3, however, is something even Gandhi would struggle with. It is arduously so. It is definitely convoluted. It could have easily been condensed into a fraction of what we received. And the English.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're all points that are definitely fair. I think I was just having so much fun with the game personally that I was able to get through it. But I do agree, like, at first, a lot of people were coming into my streams when I first started playing. They were like, dude, the story's a bit of a slog. And I was like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. Like, the first little bit, I was having a blast. I was just, you know, merrily on my way, whistling a tune, enjoying myself. And then that mid sort of point, I did start to feel. And then obviously when you got to the Thraldian, but that's when it really picked up. But yeah, you know, total fair point. And I'd say from a I know it's all subjective, but more of an objective point. It was a little bit, it was a little bit.
English voice acting up until chapter 4 was pretty bad. After making it to chapter 4, if you manage to avoid skipping through the story, as Wuwa does offer that as a feature, Genshin could never, you'll hit a point where the story becomes much more intriguing.
Agree.
Scar is introduced, the organization he's a part of is slightly introduced, the main villains of the base story are uncovered. Chapter 5 is a remarkable improvement over chapter 4, especially with the
big agree. That's definitely true. The step up was insane, and they carried that into 1.1 as well, which was good to see. Yeah, getting to that point, it really shone a light on how kind of poor some of the previous stuff was in parts.
Conclusion of Encore and Alto, and it sets up an incredible conclusion in chapter 6, featuring Gion and a certain other character that definitely brings the voice acting to a whole nother level. I got rock hard just listening to two fully grown men grunt and yell at each other. If they had started with the voice acting and story pacing in chapter 5 and 6, I think the narrative would have received a significantly better reception. However, I
think as well, potentially down the line, maybe in another year, we might see a little bit of a rework of the initial point of the game. I think just to make it a little bit more, just to attract a few more people in potentially. I don't know, maybe, but I feel like at some point that may happen, even if it's just the way that some of the writing's done and some of the voice work's done, maybe, or just some of the quest lines. But I think there's a potential for that to happen.
Also want to point out here that I do understand the world and characters needed to be built. I get that world building is necessary. It establishes characters, personalities, organization, scenarios.
Agreed.
So I can give the slow start a pass. It does.
Agreed. I think anybody who's played JRPGs over the years, that's kind of the deal. But at the same time, I think developers as well need to understand that we're in a bit of a different kind of a gaming world now. There's way more competition, and I think you need to... It's okay to have a slow build-up, but it needs to be interesting as well, doesn't it? I think too many games fail at that, nowadays, in terms of the games get good, but that initial hook isn't quite enough. I think it's getting that balance right of having that slow burn, getting into a nice sizzle, if you will, but, being enjoyable and intriguing right at the start as well.
Does pick up relatively fast, and overall I think the payoff in chapter 6 was incredible. Chapter 7 was an even larger improvement than chapter 6, however, and is arguably one of the best told segments I've seen in a gacha game. I will not spoil anything, but the voice acting is completely different to any chapter before it. The area, the characters, everything about chapter 7 feels like it was created after they had long since finished the base game. The characters no doubt have the story on their backs right now and are feeling the pressure. Speaking of, your characters, referred to as Resonators, are perhaps the most detailed, best animated characters in the gacha genre. There is no competition. It doesn't matter what parts of Wuwa you hate, the character models and animations cannot be one of them. Unless I guess you prefer the ugly characters, in which case, yeah, sure. The women...
Again, I agree with all of that, and personally, I agree with in terms of how the characters look, but I think there's probably an argument for some of the characters, for some people, a preference of maybe being a bit brighter and more colourful, but that's just a preference. But the actual idea of the way they're designed, I don't think there's an argument there to be made that they are the best looking into maybe from the fidelity side of things. But at the end of the day, I think the design is always going to be preference, because there's some awesome looking Star Rail characters and Genshin characters as well. Not the dudes, because they're all twinks, but
look like women, the men look like men, and there are no 1,000-year-old lolly dragons. Every Resonator looks and feels unique with their own unique fighting style, weapon skills, and Wuwa utilizes a few interesting systems that I want to take a moment to touch on. First, echoes. Echoes function like gear. They have two
Absolutely love the echo system. It's got its flaws with the heavy RNG side of things and a lot of farming. And the major flaw at the moment is not having enough freaking mats. We all thought the tuner system was going to be the problem. That's not a fucking problem. It's the fucking mats, man.
piece and 5-piece set effects. Every echo has their own unique ability along with stats that benefit your Resonator directly. For an easy reference point, these can be compared to artifacts in Genshin Impact or relic sets in Honkai Star Rail.
Pretty much a gear, aren't they?
Unlike the aforementioned games, echoes are farmable infinitely in the open world. Echoes are merely monsters of varying difficulty and rarity, and to complete your set, you're required to use a mixture of boss and ordinary rarity monsters, as every monster has a cost requirement, and you're allotted a maximum cost limit discernible at the top left of the screen. Echoes have their own elemental affinity, much like Resonators do, so it's imperative you focus on echoes that, excuse the pun, resonate best with each respective hero, especially given the echo equipped onto your first slot becomes a combat active ability, allowing you to transform into the monster in question, complete with this.
Again, really cool element of the game, you know. Not only is it a way cooler way to have your gear designed, but the fact that your primary gear actually has an additional element to the gameplay in terms of, like, you know, when you use your echo, you do whatever when they're spawning. Really cool item, that is, in my opinion. Element to the game, should I say.
Own utility. As noted, there are various rarities when it comes to obtaining echoes, which are directly tied to the databank feature. As your databank level increases through the accumulation of rarer monsters, you'll gain access to higher rarity units, along with expanding the cost limit of equipping them. Beyond echoes, you have your fortes, which function like a talent tree, allowing you to upgrade different areas of each respective resonator, providing them beneficial increases in stats, additional passive abilities, and even enhancements to their skills. You'll acquire the materials necessary to upgrade your fortes by merely playing the game, engaging in the various activities present throughout the world. As an addendum to
It does get a pain now towards the end when you're getting to level up your forte of the weeklies. It's like, dude, it starts to really slow down in terms of leveling your characters up, which is a bit of a pain. I get it, it's the design, but yeah, it's just a bit of a pain.
fortes, every resonator has their own resonance skill, a basic ability, a resonance liberation skill, which is their ultimate ability, a forte circuit, which appears above your health bar towards the bottom of your screen and acts like an additional type of ability, and what is arguably the most important resonator feature, intro and outro skills. Intro and outro skills offer some crazy hero ability combinations. These can range from static abilities that remain on field after characters swap out, passive abilities that boost raw or elemental damage output, healing regens. All of these combat features add significant depth to an already very fast combat.
They do. I think this is like one of the things as well when people compare this to Zenless. You know, I don't think they're fair comparisons anyway because they're totally different games. But I think sometimes not every game has to have those levels to it, and I do think Zenless has got way more nuance than people give it credit for. More, you know, just the systems in this game do add, like, they do add quite a lot of depth to the game, in my opinion. There's actually quite a lot of depth in this game, honestly.
System. Before I delve any deeper into this review, allow me to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon.
For what it is at the end of the day, you know, it is a gacha game, but I think it's got quite a lot of depth in the combat.
Patreon and YouTube channel members. Your guys' support is why I can make videos like this every single month, and I deeply appreciate you all being there for me. Since we're on the topic of combat, this is a bit of a contentious opinion to have, but I think Wuwa has the most fun, engaging action combat in the genre. Yes, better than...
Agree. I don't even think that's a hot take, in my opinion. Now, obviously, there's going to be preference. People are always going to have personal preferences, but I don't think that's even a hot take. I think even people who disagree with you will have to accept, well, they don't, but I'm saying you've got to, is that the combat in this game is good, man. You know, it is good. It might not be for you, and you might prefer other styles, but I don't think you can deny that this has got a really tight combat system. Like, it is like, obviously, the best part of the game in my eyes, because it's just so well done. There's like so many other things to write home about this game, but I just don't think you can deny, even if it's not your favorite, that it's a decent combat system.
And PGR, yes, better than Zenless, and definitely better than Tower of Fantasy. I am well aware that there are probably ZZZ fans or even Punishing Very Even fans here that are like, oh, Styx's opinion is trash. Clearly, he's never played enough of my game to know that Wuwa's combat doesn't even come close to the depth or complexity, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, sure, that very well might be true. But from what I've played, of every single action gacha out there, Wuwa's combat just feels the most fluid and rewarding to me. Perfect dodges.
It also feels the most skill-based, in my opinion, and the most, like, AAA real game combat. You know, not to say that gacha games aren't real games, but you know what I'm saying. Let's face it, they're gacha games at the end of the day. And I just feel like, you know, the combat system in this game is so well designed, in my opinion, that I feel like, you know, it actually kind of challenges games outside the combat, the gacha genre.
Parries a deep resonator and ecosystem that adds so many additional layers to combat, providing opportunities to build your characters in ways that other games just don't typically allow. Add on to that the resonator synergies, like just take Verena here for example. Her intro skill, when you swap to her, deals spectro damage. That's pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things. However, her outro skill when you swap off of her, not only provides a 19% regen based off of her attack stat, but you gain the added benefit of a 15% damage amplification to all nearby allies, including your own Resonator, for 30 seconds.
Again, Verena, insane. Insane. We need another support character. We need another sustain, another healer. We need somebody like Verena Kuro. Give it to us.
This is further enhanced by Gift of Nature, which is activated under certain conditions and boosts the attack for all party members by a further 20% for 20 seconds. Chaining abilities, passives, intros, outros, taking full advantage of elemental and physical synergies add such extensive depth to swapping, team composition, and engagement forethought. As we noted earlier, the animations are stunning, which brings significant emphasis and impact to every action, especially during ultimate abilities when you see your waifu in all her glory, or when walking around, running around.
I was waiting for the Kuma take. I was waiting for it.
Using the elevator. There are plenty of unique, interesting ways to appreciate the characters in this game, respectfully.
Traversal animations as well, just like, you know, just little things like when you're wall running and you hit a ledge, and instead of just getting freaking stuck and trying to go like this, you did the little flip. It's just, you know, just nice little quality additions to the animations that I really like.
Of course, this is made more evident by the hologram bosses that you'll engage out in the world, where if you're as mechanically challenged as I am, your lack of skill will become apparent very quickly. They don't call me flaccid sticks for nothing. I have the reflexes of a wet noodle. Wuthering Waves can be a very difficult game, and this difficulty is only magnified by the number of game modes and content present. Backtracking to Resonators real quick, like every gacha, every hero and echo has their own level. You attain levels through XP items, with both heroes and echoes utilizing separate resources,
so good,
and breakthrough level limitations with unique materials that you grind out in the world or through instance dungeons. Weapons function the exact same way, both providing large boosts in terms of damage, survivability, and overall performance. Resonators are also upgraded through their resonance chain, which is where you consume duplicate resonators you acquire through the gacha, or if you have enough Afterglow Coral built up from the gacha pulls.
Can't do that. I have not been able to do that. My FOMO is too strong. A second I get enough for a couple of Radiant Tides or Forging Tides, I'm like, fucking give them here. Again, against some self-interest, because it would be nice to get some wave bands, but I just can't save them up, man. It just does not happen. I keep seeing people like that, and they've got like a few hundred. I'm like, dude, how would you do it, bro? I just can't do it, man. Got no self-control.
The item exchange. Wuthering Waves actually allows for players to purchase Resonator wave bands with excess currency they acquire through pulling characters, both limited and standard, rewarding you with additional opportunities to upgrade Resonators you wouldn't typically find in most gachas. The cash up is also relatively fair. Your normal $5 monthly subscription, refreshing bundles each patch, free leveling bundles, lots of options to expend all that accumulated coral on in the points shop. There's a battle pass present referred to as the Pioneer Podcast, which houses a number of useful items, XP items, stamina restoration items, currency, free pulls for the gacha, tuners for your echoes. Every refresh of the battle pass, if you purchase a premium option, you'll also be gifted additional rewards, including a free 5-star weapon of your choice. The gacha in Wuthering Waves is referred to as convening. Like all gacha games, WuWa has both limited and standard banners. Limited banners cycle through over the course of each major patch. At the time of recording, Changli is the current limited banner Resonator, with Zheji coming in the near future. And while I have Changli now,
gonna be the next one,
I will admit it was not easy to obtain her. It cost $150 a couple days ago after I failed pity. So earlier this morning, I decided I was going to take out a loan to S6 her. When the banker asked me what I needed this loan for, I merely looked him in the eye and slowly slid a picture of Changli across the table. With a mere glance, I could tell he knew. He looked back, he gave me a small smile, and just nodded as he slowly slid the paperwork over for me to sign.
I understand, brother.
He knew. He knew. While there are hero banners, there are also weapon banners to roll for. When pulling on a limited banner, you're guaranteed a 5-star rarity unit at 8.
Like, just looking at the gameplay, Styx is making it look a little bit jank, but man, the traversal's so good in this game. He's not selling it well, but like the traversal is so good in this game. Yes, way play storage is going to be goated.
With a 50-50 chance of obtaining the banner character on display, which, as noted, I failed. If you fail, at your next pity, hard pity, 160 pulls in, you'll be guaranteed the Resonator. Weapons, however, are guaranteed at 80 pity. There is no 50-50 for weapon banners.
I love that about the weapon banners, because just like, obviously, let's not pretend that these games aren't predatory and there isn't the potential to spend a lot of cash, but I love the fact that at least with the weapons, if you want to go for a weapon, you know, whether you're going to be free or you're going to pay, you know you're going to get it no matter what, you know, whether you end up having to go all the way to hard pity or you get lucky and you get it in a few pulls. It's good to know that, you know, right, on this particular thing, I know I'm going to get, and I like that.
Thankfully. Honestly, this is not a horrible gacha system. It's much fairer than a lot of its competition,
Yeah,
but
agree.
definitely a reasonable distance for being as free-to-play friendly as Kudo's other gacha, Punishing Grey Raven. Wuwa has a functional co-op mode that is much more interactive and generous than Genshin Impact. A
Still yet to even try it out.
common complaint I heard within Genshin was the inability to really share or do much. That's a little different in Wuwa, as not only can you share materials, or more accurately, not only can your friends raid your world for upgrade materials, resources, not only can you fight bosses together and share the rewards, but you can also freely farm echoes out in the world together. So my wife and I go to each other's worlds and farm the echoes we need in unison.
I was going to say, that's what I've noticed a lot of people tend to use the code for. Is just like when they've farmed all the particular echo they're after on the overworld, they just go into a friends and farm it in there, like.
Adds
Which is
additional avenues and activities to do with other players. I've seen players spend hours grinding together. This was definitely a good direction to take co-op, however I definitely think it could have benefited more from additional co-op modes like dungeons, maybe allow for shared hologram boss fights. It might
I would just like to see full-on dungeons anyway in these games. I'd like to see a little bit more from that in regards to Wuthering Waves, you know, not just you go in, instance fight. I'm cool with that and I want more of that, but I want to be able to go in and have an actual dungeon that's got a little bit more mechanics, you know, maybe some platforming, some light puzzle work, some low enemies, some elite enemies, and then a big boss at the end, and then, you know, you kind of like the old MMO thing, and then there's a chest to open and a bunch of gear, whatever that gear might be. I just think that'd be a really cool addition to the game, personally.
trivialize it a little, sure, but
And hopefully it
you could
happens.
scale the fights depending on how many players were present, make it into like a small raid boss. The options are endless. Now, if exploring the world, grinding echoes, failing to eliminate the hologram bosses, I mean, I can't be the only one that has trouble with them, right? Pursuing the story or engaging in side quests is not your thing, absolutely no problem. You can skip most of that and make your way over to the Tower of Adversity, where you'll slowly clear various levels with a team that has a limited amount of vigor, requiring you make use of several different
I'll see you there, Sticks, having to put Rover in at the start and then slamming Verena in every round after that, because, you know, we need another sustain.
teams to overcome. This is not a mode that you are meant to clear overnight. It's a mode that you're slowly going to build up to clearing as you level, as you equip and upgrade your Resonators. This is a type of endgame that not everyone is going to be interested in, and that is fine. Wuwa offers players a lot to do, although like all gacha games, once you do clear everything, once you loot every chest, once you defeat every enemy, solve every puzzle, upgrade every Resonator, fap to every waifu, you'll learn very quickly that there really isn't actually anything to do.
Agreed. This is why I believe most gacha games fail at the end game, and this is why I think it would suit this game perfectly to get us some raid type content. And you can have weekly raids that reset, have raids that just last over a particular patch or are just permanent. But I think that's the way, you know, and actually genuinely difficult raids as well. And different levels to those raids kind of thing, you know, whether there's like the end boss is different versions of kind of like a hologram, so to speak, you know, where you choose the difficulties, you go in, you choose your team, you can maybe have backup teams as well, add different elements to the game like that, and then you go through an interesting dungeon basically. And I think if they had something like that, dude, that'd be so freaking cool. Like, that's something that I really want to the game, and I want some difficult overworld content as well, just like, you know, some like random overworld content that's actually genuinely difficult, as well as some like particular bosses that are roaming around like overworld bosses. You know, just look at what MMOs do and add that in, because these games do take a lot of MMO type influences in regards to how you approach things and the farming and stuff. Why not bring those in? You know what I mean? I just feel like it just feels like it's a simple thing to add to the game that would benefit the game so much.
presently. Not that there won't be in the future.
They're
I understand
RPGs
that
at the end of
given
the
we are
day, so
only
why
in
not add
1.1,
RPG
and
elements
therefore
into the game more
finite
and more?
amount of content is totally understandable. At this point, you're going to likely opt to just log in daily, clear your daily and weekly missions, and log off. Not because the game is bad, but because once you've completed the game and whatever patch it's currently on, you'll be running around a stagnant world void of new content. Again, this is not something that is specific to WoW. This is an issue that every gacha game tends to have, which is why I play several gacha games at any given time. Punishing Grey Raven, Nikke, Blue Archive, Arknight, Guardian Tales. This way, it allows me to log in, to do my dailies, and then play through whatever other game I want to play that has an event or...
So I feel like the people talk about like what's going to challenge Genshin, what's going to challenge Honkai. If anything ever can, but I do think that'll be the game that does it. The game that really has interesting, replayable, changeable, variety endgame that's genuinely interesting and has a little bit extra to it, rather than you go into this instant, you bash a couple of enemies, you're out. It gets a little bit more difficult, you're out. You have to change your team, you go back in, you're out. It needs to be a little bit more than that. And I understand that some people will be like, well, that takes away from the casual element. But then again, not everybody needs to tackle that content. It's there for people who want to continue playing the game, kind of like how MMOs do. You know, there's plenty of content that you can do in MMOs that don't require you to do those sort of high-end raids, but they're there for the people who maybe want to party up in a raid party and go for that super difficult content, or even maybe not the super difficult content, just the content that might take a little bit of time and they can get some cool gear out at the end of it. You know, and I know you're not going to get gear in the same sense because of it being a gacha game, but there's materials to be gathered, you know, there's materials to get, there's maybe potential 4-star items to get. I just feel like it's a no-brainer, man.
A recent patch released. I think overall, Wuthering Waves has definitely become a main game for me. I log in every single day and I haven't missed a day since launch. I love the combat, I love how difficult—
I am annoyed I broke my streak. I am annoyed. Kind of annoyed that I broke my streak yesterday, and I missed out on my 90 asteroids as well because I pay for the asteroid pass as well, so that kind of sucks.
What they can be. I love the bosses. I love the content available. The Tower of Adversity, the hologram bosses, the echo grinding, the depths of the elusive realm and other events. The characters are gorgeous. The animations are flawless. Being able to grapple to higher levels.
Because that's the closest thing we've really got to a kind of a raid system, haven't we? The depths of elusive realms. But it's just not the same, you know? I want to be able to go in with like my party and it not be designed in the way that is, because it feels a little bit more like the simulated universe, which I suppose it's, like I say, it's kind of like what I'm describing, but not actually a true raid. Just give us full-on raids like that. Just do it. Do it.
Run up walls as opposed to solely climb. They add depth and layers to exploration, making it more fun, more enjoyable. The voice acting was admittedly quite horrible for a while, in English anyway, but it has gotten significantly better, especially in patch 1.1. The story was equally as poor quality for the first few chapters as the voice acting was, but I can give it a pass once again due to being related to world building. By the end of 1.1, however, it became one of my favorite gacha stories.
I don't think that's an excuse though, personally. You know, just being like, well, it's world building. I don't think that's why it was just done poorly, personally. You can world build and it be interesting. The problem was sometimes you just had characters waffling about shit that wasn't even adding to the lore or world building, which I love. I'm a lore fanatic. You know, if you want to dump a bunch of lore on me that's interesting and adds to the story, have at it. But most of it was just like bullshit half the time and characters just waffling about shit you just didn't care about.
Stories. I love being able to farm my gear echoes endlessly. I just wish we had more materials with which to level them, as I hate tuning them and getting 2 or 3 defense or HP substats. Goddamn, it kills my momentum to keep grinding. The world is enormous and filled with things to find, things to do. Puzzles were a little bit repetitious though and didn't really offer much in terms of challenge. I also appreciate how generous Kudo have been with the game. Wuthering Waves didn't have the best launch month. There were issues with localization, latency, performance. Nothing game-breaking, no duplication exploits, no plagiarism.
It didn't have the best, but I think as modern games go, and I suppose I'm too used to being in the AAA space, as modern games go, it wasn't the worst, you know? There's massive corporations out there, and I know that these guys are not short of backing and money behind them, that launch games, and they're in a shit state of affairs for sometimes weeks after launch, sometimes even longer. And I'm not even just talking about multiplayer games, I'm talking about single-player games as well, so I'm not defending that there was some issues on launch, but in comparison to a lot of what happens in the modern gaming age, which is not a defense, I understand, it's not an excuse, you know, I think it wasn't terrible. But obviously, I was lucky and I had no issues, so when I was getting all that free stuff, I was just like, yo, this is sweet. Give me more. Can people have more problems, please? Because you know, I want some more. I want some more pulls, man.
Definitely irritating for some players. I'll admit I never encountered any difficulties myself, but I know that some people did. Kudo adequately compensated us though, so much so that their first month revenue was directly affected. To give you guys an example,
Sir, we mistranslated some text on a weapon. What do we do? Okay, I know exactly how to handle this. Go ahead and give everybody a free tenfold.
Oh my god, the devs listened.
Sir, we accidentally leaked thousands of private player emails. What do we do? Okay, I know exactly how to handle this. Go ahead and give every single player a free tenfold.
Oh my god, the devs listened.
Sir, we've free 5-star selector. Yeah, that'll shut them up.
Oh my god, the devs listened.
we got so many free 10 polls, both limited and standard, along with a guaranteed 5-star selector at the expense of Kudo's revenue. They could have potentially milked more money out of their players had they not chosen to be as generous as they were, but this built a level of rapport with their players, showing that they are in fact passionate about the game and genuinely care about the players playing it.
Yeah, they have given that that persona off, that they do seem to genuinely care about the game and about the community and about making the game as best as possible and making people you know, expressing, you know, showing their gratitude of the support. Obviously that might change, and I understand as well they've got to be more like that because they've got Hoyoverse looming over them now. If the roles were reversed, would they be so generous? Probably not, but I'm not going to use that against them because at the end of the day, they're trying, and that's a good thing for us.
Other games and studios could learn from this. Although I feared that this has made the players a little bit more entitled to freebies, compensation, and rewards of this magnitude, and I hope that it really doesn't come back to bite them in the ass. Wuthering Waves is a fantastic game. It's no Genshin Impact. It shouldn't be compared to Genshin.
It's not something that they can continue to do. You know, it definitely isn't.
Impact. They are different games. They feel different.
I disagree on that point, though. That's where I'm going to have to hard disagree. People are constantly comparing this game to Zenless Zone Zero, which being both out at the same time. Okay, have at it. Have at it. But it's unfair to compare them because they're just not the same game. You better compare in Zenless Zone Zero with Snowbreak, with PGR, with Solo Leveling Rise. But I do genuinely think it is totally fair to compare this with Genshin. They are very similar. They do the same thing. They're open world ARPG gacha games with switching mechanics, with similar systems, with kind of comparable content in regards, you know, the story isn't the same, but it's kind of attacked in the same sort of vein to a degree. You know, obviously there's a lot of divergences going on, but I think it's totally fair to compare them. You know, I do. You know, because let's face it, this game is heavily inspired by Genshin. I think if a game's heavily inspired by it, you know, which I'm fine with and I like, I think it's fair to say, like, well, let's have a look at the comparisons of what was the inspiration for this game then. And I think for the most part, Wuthering Waves comes out on top. But that's not to say that it isn't fair to compare them. I think it's totally fair, if I'm honest.
Different niches. At the end of the day, I have a lot of fun in it, and I would rate it after patch 1.1 an 8 out of 10. Pre 1.1, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Post 1.1, an 8. Now, if Wuthering Waves is not a gacha you're at all interested in, absolutely no problem.
Styx is the gacha man. If you want to find out about gacha games, he's the man that can. That was a good video, actually. I like that. It's different from the usual Styx content, if I'm honest. A good review. I think it was fair. I think that's a fair score, you know, 8 out of 10. A lot of people might not say, probably more lean on the 7. I think if I had to unbiased rate the game, I'd probably give it a 7.5, maybe an 8, I guess. I just think the way I rate games is a little bit different. For me, like a 9 out of 10 is top tier, top tier, you know, because 10 is perfect, and I don't really think any game has ever been perfect. There's games that have come very close, but I suppose I'm a little bit more strict in what I give 10s to. I don't do reviews, and I don't exactly, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's all just fucking opinions. But, you know, an 8 to me is an incredibly good game. Like a 9 is as good as it gets. So like a 7 is a fucking good score for me. You know, anything over a 5, you're talking a decent game. Five's average, so anything over a 5 is a good game. So I think that's a totally fair review. Yeah, can't disagree on most of his points, really. Major one I'll say I disagree on. I think it's totally fair to compare this game to Genshin. Somebody who prefers this over Genshin, I think it's a total fair comparison. They're very similar games. This game is heavily inspired by the other one, and I think you know, there's nothing wrong with looking at, oh, this is what Genshin does, and this is how Wuthering Waves does it. Traversal, combat, you know, story, whatever it might be. I think it's a lot more fair to compare this to Genshin than it is to Zenless Zero anyway. But yeah, good video. A brutal gacha review for Wuthering Waves. I don't think it was brutal at all. I think it was totally fair and a good video, actually. You should definitely check out Sticks and show the Kuma some love, because he is a massive Kuma